What's up, everybody? This is Terrence Plummer II. You're tuned in to the UCF Football Updates podcast. Let's go.
This is Mac Loudermilk, and you're listening to the UCF Football Updates podcast.
What up, Night Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the UCF Football Updates podcast. Today, we have a former All-AAC Conference offensive lineman who played at UCF from 2009 to 2013 and was part of one of the best teams in UCF history, none other than Chris Martin. Thanks for coming on the pod, Chris. How are you today?
Man, I'm glad to be here, and it's crazy to hear those stats. You know, it seems like a lifetime ago, but man, we really were a part of something special while we were there.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. You were really part of one of those, the first really big team that got UCF on the map. Obviously, you had a lot of pro players, and I want to get into that in a little bit, but I want to start off with just kind of your story, your recruiting. You know, coming out of high school, you were out of Fort Walton Beach. Looks like you had some looks from Purdue and Clemson, Florida State, a couple other schools. When you were kind of deciding between all the schools, what made you ultimately decide UCF? And I also saw that you were kind of originally recruited as a defensive lineman, so I want to learn a little bit how you shifted from that over to O-line as well.
Whew. That's taking it back.
Yeah.
And in high school, I started as an offensive lineman my sophomore year of high school. So I started at left tackle. So I really kind of originated as an O-lineman, but I was faster than an average offensive lineman. I had speed, and I wasn't afraid to, put the pads on and hit somebody.
Right.
And so I ended up switching my junior year to defensive tackle, defensive end. And so I was getting recruited as O-line as a sophomore, which is illegal, but, that's how they do things.
Yeah.
But, as I got older and older, I started getting recruited more and more as defensive lineman. I started getting, All-American looks and this kind of stuff. So it was a fun journey. As far as recruiting goes, UCF was actually the first team to ever contact me.
Okay.
It was Brent Key, and a guy who ended up being my offensive line coach. And so when he was finally allowed to start talking to me and recruiting me, him and I started talking about it. And so I always had the interest. But back then, we're talking about 2008.
Mm-hmm.
UCF wasn't known like they are today. They weren't even in the same caliber of football that they are today.
Sure.
And so it was a whole different ballgame. So I was interested in them, A, because they were in Florida, and B, because the coaches were gung-ho about playing for me. And I liked that. I liked the fact that they were set on trying to get me, and I really appreciated that from them. And so they were always in the back of my mind. But I was getting pretty big looks from a lot of these D1 schools. I got scholarships from a lot, especially around the Southeast. I got a lot of, Alabama was probably my number two. It was a shell-shocked moment when Nick Saban calls your cell phone and tells you, how bad they want to get you to Alabama. I took several visits to Bama, and even as far as the whole process goes, I had my first official was to UCF. My second official visit that I had scheduled was going to be to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And so after I visited UCF, that's when I was pretty much convinced at that point. So it wasn't just necessarily just the coaches, but being a Florida boy, Florida native, it was something I preferred to stay in Florida. But then when I was thinking about the city and what else, everything else to offer outside of football, Orlando would have been probably the top. Tuscaloosa is a great city, don't get me wrong. There's not a crazy amount of stuff going on in Tuscaloosa like there is in Florida. You know what I mean? And so
very true.
I saw the school, and it kind of looked like a paradise of a college, if that makes sense. The palm trees, the big pools, everybody's kind of in summer dresses. It was fun. And so I visited, they gave me the full treatment. The guys on the team were awesome. I'm still friends with a lot of them today. So I was like, okay, this school has really something to offer. And as the day went on, I started to realize, man, yeah, I could play here and be completely content with it. My mindset going into college was, you may not know UCF now, but you're going to know it by the time I leave.
Sure.
Kind of how I had that same mindset. Like you said, I was a D lineman. I'm going to change the school as a defensive lineman. I ended up redshirting my first year. They had Terrell Troop at D-line. Dude was a stud. They had Bruce Miller, David Williams, just Darius Null.
Yeah, great defense.
Yeah, exactly. They were just so stacked. They didn't need an 18-year-old kid, fresh off his shoulder surgery coming into this plant. They just didn't need me right then.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the whole scout team thing for that first year, which was the 09 year. Yeah, the 09 year when we played. We ended the season with Rutgers down in the St. Pete Bowl.
Yep, I was there.
Yeah, that was my first bowl game experience, and we got a ring from it. I still have my ring, and so that was such a cool moment for a guy who I didn't get to play any games that year as a practice squad guy or a scout team guy, but it was still an experience. I was D-line all year. Came back, and after the season was over, we had Christmas break off. I came back in January of 09. That's when I met my wife, and that's when I came back. And they told me when I got back to school, they were like, "Look, okay, so I don't want to dog the previous O-line, the Rutgers O-line, but if you were at the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
they got their asses handed to them, and it was not pretty on any level of the game. And ultimately, what I was told, and I don't know if I've ever even told anybody this before, but what I was told when I came back was, we don't have any attitude. We don't have any attitude on the offensive line. We don't have any. They call it swagger. Like, we don't have that on the offensive line. It's like, we want you to bring that attitude, that meanness, that swagger. Like, we need that on our offensive line. And I was like, I don't know the first thing about playing O-line. I played it when I was 14. But I don't know how to play it on the D1 level. And so I had to kind of relearn the position. I ended up beating out a senior to play in 2010. I got injured early in the season, so I had to sit out a few games while I recovered, and I came back for they gave me the start back for the bowl games. I played all season. Me and Aubrey Leggins kind of bounced back and forth. I started like 3 or 4 games as that redshirt freshman that year, and I fell in love with the position. I fell in love with the coach, and that was the year I played. It was 2010 in the Liberty Bowl. So I had the bowl game at Rutgers the year before. Then the next bowl game the next year was the Liberty Bowl versus an SEC opponent that was pretty stacked. Everybody was talking about them and their quarterback. They had AJ Green, this and that.
Yeah.
And I played left tackle then that year, 2010, when we beat them. I think it was 10-6.
Yep, that's what it was. Yeah.
That was the start of my career. That was my first season coming in and trying to change things. We had a lot of firsts, right? We beat that dang SEC team that was supposed to blow us out. Remember, everybody was talking about how it wasn't going to be a match. We were no match. It was a pushover game. We whooped that ass. We beat them all game. It was they couldn't do anything about it to stop us. It was a close game because defenses were both stout. They had a really good defense, but we won. I remember the play like it was yesterday when Tavius ran that touchdown.
Yep.
So it was. I was like, man, we're about to win this. And at the end of the game, I was sitting on the sideline holding Latavius' hand. When they were going for the Hail Marys to try to bring it back. I think Kamal Ishmael knocked it down.
Yep.
And so I was like, man, this is it. We're out there bouncing on the sidelines, really about to beat this team. So that was my first year kind of switching from a D-line to O-line. I had such an experience. I was like, man, this is pretty special. I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
At first I was a little upset about it because I loved playing D-line. But after that first season, beating Georgia, I think we were like 11-3 or something, really great record. I think we might have lost to Boston College. That I can't remember all the. I think they had Luke. I think they had Kuechly and all that still then. It was.
Yeah, that was the next year you guys beat Boston College. That was the year they were 5-7. But the year before, the losses were. And there's a couple in conference. I think you lost to Southern Miss. We lost to Southern Miss. I want to say. Yeah, and we lost to maybe like a out of conference game. I can't quite recall who it was, but no, I mean that's a interesting how you switch from the D line to O line. You ended up really becoming a stud offensive lineman that for UCF, and were part of some really good O line. So I kind of want to talk about that. So you go into you have your redshirt freshman year, like you said, where your career took off. You guys beat Georgia. Then the following year, things kind of fall apart a little bit. UCF goes 5-7, and you have this what was that?
Say something about that. That year is probably 15 plays away from being a good year. I mean, we were FIU, and I remember the plays like it was yesterday. You know what I mean? When
I remember that game
randomly. And a guy picked it up on a perfect bounce. I think Torian was in that left tackle. him and I were alternating, and it was just like the perfect storm on these games. And it was so frustrating because the team was still good. I mean, we were still a good
No,
team.
talent for sure.
That year was so frustrating. And that was the only season while I was at UCF that wasn't a good one.
Yeah, no, that was it. The other years were great. So you guys rebound that next year. In 2012, you have a much better year than the year before. I mean, you're on the offensive line, so that you had the Godfrey year against Georgia where Godfrey broke out as a freshman. Then he had that shaky year the following year, and that's when him and Bortles sort of kind of started sharing time, and it was a kind of a 2 QB system, if you will. But then junior year, your junior year, 2012, Bortles takes over the role full time. I mean, how tough was that for the locker room? Because I mean, you're a guy that was around Godfrey when he hooked UCF to their first ever bowl win. I mean, he was part of history. Was that tough? Is that tough to kind of see him lose his position when I think we all saw Bortles was probably better, but at the same time, it wasn't like Godfrey wasn't great. So how tough was that in the locker room?
Personally, and the locker room, I can give you two different perspectives from this.
Okay.
So Jeff Godfrey is a very close friend of mine, super close. I'm the godfather of his child.
Wow.
I lived with him in college, and so Godfrey, I love Godfrey. He's a great friend of mine. Two completely different quarterbacks, and as an offensive lineman, that's hard to. It's kind of hard to adjust for, because you have Godfrey, who is that scat back quarterback that if you screw up, he'll just escape and run the ball kind of thing. Whereas Bortles was a pocket quarterback. I mean, he was like, he was the quarterback that you wanted back there.
Sure.
But what I honestly think separated them was their commitment to the mental part of being a quarterback. Where Godfrey would rely on talent, which he had abundance of, Blake relied on his knowledge. And so Blake was very good at understanding defenses, understanding coverages, understanding, who's going to be the hot route if they bring this blitz off the left side or this and that. Where Godfrey was almost a reaction, Blake was more of an action quarterback where he would try to be proactive as opposed to reactive in the sense of, when this offensive line or when he was doing his offensive line play. And so they understood, what to do in their situations respectively. But as an offensive lineman, I personally would prefer somebody back there that is like Bortles. Sure. I love the scat back, right? If I screw up at left tackle and I get my ass kicked by a defensive end and he's blowing to the quarterback, I want him to escape. Like, I want the quarterback not to get hit because I don't get the sack, right? Obviously, and so that's obviously important to have. It's like the only stats you have as an offensive lineman is sacks, right? And so, so that was always a good thing. But when you have a quarterback back there that is going to make the right pass if it opens up, it changes the way you play. It changes the way you outlook for the entire game. And so that was what Blake was. Like, don't get me wrong, Godfrey can complete the best pass than anybody else. Like, that boy can throw. I know he can. He's a great friend of mine. But Bortles knew where the receivers were going to be and knew where the DBs were going to be at the same time. And so that's why he got in the NFL and played for as long as he did, because he was a good quarterback, but you obviously need the other pieces of the puzzle to be great. And so having those kind of different styles is kind of hard adjusting for, but I'm glad we did. I love Godfrey, and hell, he was just as good at a slot receiver as he was a quarterback.
Oh yeah,
that's the kind of athlete he was, and is. And so it was a pleasure to see that. It was a pleasure to know those two. But it was a different transition, and you would see it the most when you would see who was studying the night before the games. You'd see Godfrey walking around, and you'd see Blake walking around with a playbook in his hand. And so those kind of things stuck out to me and made me realize, like, this kid wants to be good. At this point, I'm already an old guy. After gray shirting, after red shirting, and then finally playing. Like, I'm already – that started my career when I was 19, getting ready to turn 20. And so, I'm already an old guy. And so it was cool to see them both grow up and transition to who they were. But I appreciated what Blake did as a quarterback and perfecting his craft as opposed to relying on talent.
Sure,
and so
sure.
Made it really cool to see and learn to be a part of.
Yeah, man. Well, that's a great overview, but that year ended real great. I mean, you guys won 8 out of the last 10 games. Obviously you beat, Ball State in that brief O'Brady's Bowl. So you had some momentum going into that special 2013 season. But I really want to dive into that because, you guys obviously knew talent was there, but you're moving from the Conference USA to the American Athletic Conference. And I know there was a lot of the same teams that moved over with you guys, but you also moved into a conference that had some teams that, were teams you weren't used to playing, like a top 10 Louisville team. You had Rutgers, you had USF, you had some of these other schools that were part of the Big East, that were part of a quote unquote, power conference, and you essentially, that AAC, there was a lot of pressure that year because it had 1 year left of being that auto bid to getting a BCS Bowl, which is called at the time, now they're New Year's Six Bowls. But you essentially would have had to, you merely needed to go perfect, which we ended up doing, but you had to go perfect in order to really take that conference. I mean, did you guys go into that year expecting, or at least thinking, that there was a more than better chance that you could run the table in the conference and get that BCS Bowl? I mean, or was that a little bit of a surprise to you how well you guys played year one in the new conference?
I think having that mentality starting the season is what made us go that far. I remember like it was yesterday, sitting in the team meeting room the first time, and O'Leary told us, it's like, look, we got a chance to do something great. Like, we have a chance. And in this old word, he didn't say it like this, but I don't remember the exact words.
Yeah.
He was a different character in himself. But he basically told us, like, our goal is the BCS Bowl. He's like, we make it to the BCS Bowl, everything else will take care of itself. Like, don't even worry about everything else. Our goal, we're not focused on the conference championship. We're not focused on this. We're focusing on making it to a BCS Bowl. And that was all he talked about. And that's what we focused on. And we believed it. I mean, we knew we could. We knew we had the team. The year before, I was a tight end, and so I caught that pass from Blake the first game up at Akron, played tight end for like half the season, and we were down so many linemen, ended up switching. But the guys that we had are all studs. Everybody was a stud. So we knew we had the ability. We knew we had the mindset. We knew we had the training. We knew we had the coaches, because our coaches are geniuses.
Mm-hmm.
So we had all the pieces in the puzzle, and it came down to us. And we always knew that. And we always knew if we just execute what we were trying to do, we'll get it done. And that was our mindset. Even when things got rough, we'd be in the huddle and we'd be like, this ain't over. This is only the beginning. We got 45 seconds and a timeout left. We need 2 touchdowns. We got this. It's not, we'll figure it out. So it was like, that there was never, like, I can never remember a time during that season in these huddles every game where we were like, it's not looking good, boys. Like, it was always like, man, these guys think they're about to win. It was kind of like one of those things. And so we always had that mindset. It was never in our mind that we were going to lose. Sure. Even South Carolina, we were like, oh, we're going to get it. We shot ourselves in the foot. I think we were up like 10-0 at the half or something like that.
Yeah.
And Clowney didn't get 1 sack. It was just like we were riding high. We were like, there's no way we can lose. Like, we have great D-line, a great O-line, backers, running backs, quarterbacks, DBs. Like, it was just like, our special teams was great. Sean Moffitt kicking the ball couldn't miss.
Right.
And it was like, we have all the pieces. If we just do what we're supposed to do, kind of do your job, we'll win. And we believe that wholeheartedly, and it came to fruition for us. So.
Absolutely. I mean, that year was so cool. I mean, you talked about that mentality. I mean, that you guys never really thought you were going to lose, but you only had 1 loss, like you said, to South Carolina. Was there anything else that made that team so special? I know you said that you're deep everywhere. You had some great coaches, and then the mentality, but was there anything else that kind of stood out about that team, whether it was, chemistry or whatever? Because I don't think many people picked UCF to win the American that year, let alone go 12-1, yet let alone beat, Baylor. Was there what else just had made that team come together so well?
You said it earlier, man. It was the camaraderie. It was the chemistry. It was these guys. All of us would have done anything for anybody on that team, and a lot of us were still incredibly close. And that was something that we all understood. It's not like before every single game. So we would travel on Friday, for our Saturday games. Every Thursday night, Jordan, Justin, Joey Grant, and Blake Bortles and myself, we would all go out to eat. It was just like it was a thing. We'd always go to Mellow Mushroom here in Orlando, right on Colonial and Alameda. It was our thing. We did it every Thursday night, the only game we did not do that for is take a guess.
South Carolina.
Carolina. The only that we did not go to eat the night before. We were like, nope, never again.
Yeah.
Kelly Davidson would come with us too, the Marine. And so we just had that bond. We were, always together outside of football. And I think, as, playing football for as long as, I had to play, or I got the opportunity to play, you learn the traits of a good team. And I could tell you with zero doubt that that's the biggest one. Like, do you hang out with your team outside of football? Do you know their family? Do you know I ate with Justin and Jordan's mom? I played and lived with their brother, their older brother, who was a great friend. Lived with friend.
Mm-hmm.
His mom, I call mom. His dad, I call pop. And they're like, that kind of camaraderie and relationship, you won't have a successful team without it.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, was the biggest thing, is how much. And it wasn't like all the receivers hung out or all the DBs or all the O-line. It was like we all hung out. We all went out together. We all did things all together. It didn't matter the positions and this and that. We wanted to be great, and we knew we wanted to be great, and we wanted to do it all together. So
yeah, I think that's the theme. Yeah, I think that's the theme with all of UCF's great teams. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of guys from the 2017 team, and they said the same thing with like the brotherhood and the camaraderie. But you mentioned how you hung out with a lot of the O-line guys, but I wanted to talk about specifically the O-line. I mean, that might have been the best O-line in school history with you and the McCray brothers and Torian Wilson, Joey Grant. I mean, Aaron Evans was like a young, guy in that team as well. I mean, there was just, that O-line was stacked. Can you talk about, how special that O-line was? Because I don't really think we've seen one. We've had some good ones in 17 and 18 with, Jordan Johnson, some of these other guys, but like, I really feel as a guy that was in school during, I was in school pretty much the same exact time as you were, 08 to 13 for me. I think that was one of the best O-lines I've ever seen. So can you talk about how special that O-line was?
I tell you this, I love those guys to death, and I would do anything for all of them, and we always had our times together. I love these guys so much that I just went to Justin's baby shower January 21st at the table with Jordan and Torian. And, Joey works a lot. It's probably the only reason he wasn't even there.
Right.
Guys that I still communicate with on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, I talked to Justin and Jordan yesterday. And I think it goes to be said, too, that it wasn't just the 2013 season. I've been playing with Torian, Justin, and Jordan for 3 years at this point. And that's 3 years of, just all the stuff we did together outside of school, classes, eating and all that kind of stuff. So the relationship that I had with all those guys, sorry, my son's just got out of the water. So
yeah, no worries.
That relationship, I could never take, I never change that for anything. I talk to these guys, and I would do anything for any one of those guys still to this day.
Yep.
When we communicate as much as we can with our crazy lives. Jordan's still playing, Justin's still playing, and Torian's training amazing athletes. Torian's doing great things training offensive linemen. He's probably one of the best offensive linemen I've ever seen. All three of those dudes.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to play with Jordan on the Apollos too, and it was the same thing. The dude is just phenomenal. Justin, phenomenal. I played next to Justin. He was the guy I played next to the most. And so these guys, man, that was a big deal. And Joey came in that year, and Joey was the brains. He was smart. And the way our offensive line worked, he set the tone, and he, would obviously call out the mic, call out what the play, like what he was going to do, and we would all play off that. So it doesn't work without Joey. Right, we all needed him, kind of thing, and so Joey was that young brains that came in and handled his business the way he needed to for us. Being there for as long as I got to see a whole lot of different athletes. I loved playing with Joey because of how confident, how smart he was, and how hard he played. It was a special time.
Sure.
And so it's something that I'll never take for granted. And man, I love those guys to death. To this day, I don't know how many guys are still close from college with their old line buddies, but it's just like yesterday. Like nothing will ever change. As soon as we see each other, it's like the same old jokes, the same stuff we would do, when we're got our hands in the dirt talking to each other.
That's the best type of friendships.
It's the best, so I played next to Justin most. I played right tackle. He was right guard. So we played, him and I were so comfortable next to each other that we really didn't have to talk. We knew that each other understood the play, who we were going to. We would kind of just call out whoever was, who we were going to, kind of thing. And kind of funny story. The movie Rush Hour. I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Tucker, Jackie Rush Hour. And there's a scene in the movie where they'll go. One guy goes, I'll go that way, you go this way, and they get ready to go and kind of to like a little like a fight with everybody. And so we're all big fans of the movie, and John doing that on the field in the middle of a play. I'd look over. Oh, and I would, but we knew we were going. Obviously, it was just kind of, playful banter. But I would be like, I go that way, you go this way. You go, no. I go that way, you go this way. Put this in the middle of the field with our hands. And so, it's one of those things where, in the card that I gave him for his baby shower, I wrote that.
Sure.
I was like, I went that way and you went this way, didn't we? So, it's all those little things that you cherish and you appreciate after that amount of time. And you realize that, it wasn't just for college. It was a lifetime frienddip that we built during those years. And it's pretty special that way. And those guys mean, like I said, the world to me. And I'm glad that I got to experience that with them together. Let me see if I can get some lights on.
Yeah. So, I want to, you had mentioned that, like a lot of these guys are still playing football, like the McRae's and whatnot. You obviously, like you said, I mean, you played for the Apollos. You obviously played a little bit in the NFL with the Patriots. What with your playing career, I know you had some injuries, but, with a lot of these leagues that have, started again, you have the USFL, you have the XFL. Have you, considered kind of going back? Is that something that you would still do? I mean, I know you're obviously a firefighter now and you have a lot of stuff going on, but is there any lure to kind of go back and play again? Or are your playing days behind you?
Selfishly, I would still love to play, and I had the opportunity to keep playing. When all these leagues were coming out, a lot of the guys from our Apollos team went to the XFL,
right?
And they were all on the team. The owners are kind of the same as the Apollos, and so the opportunity was there.
Mm-hmm.
But it really kind of came down to my wife just kind of being over. Like you were saying, when I played in the NFL, man, I signed 15 different contracts.
Yeah.
Moving from, playing for the Dolphins and moving up to New England, and then my family moves up there. We rent a house, and then I get cut. I stay. I come back on the team. I get cut again. Player, numbers games.
Yeah.
So then, okay, I'm cut, and I move out to California. The family moved out to California, and then same thing happens. I'm there for 8, 9, 10 months. Personnel gets low, get cut. Go to Texas. Family moves to Texas. So after all these moves and all this stuff, my wife was over it.
Yeah.
She was ready for stability. She was ready for a change, and so I gave it to her. And I've been wanting to be a firefighter for a while, and it's what I wanted to do after I was done. So I went for it. And when all these other leagues started coming out, I was already in school. I was already in school. I was already, had already paid. I was already doing good. Kind of set in my ways, I guess. And don't get me wrong. There's not a day that goes by where I'm like, man, I want to be back out there with Jordan. I want to be out playing. I know Aaron still wants to play. Aaron Evans and I are still really good friends. I was just talking to him today.
Right.
We're trying to figure out if we're going to golf tournament at UCF and all that. And so it was hard transitioning, but it's a sacrifice that I need to make for the mental sanity of my wife and just for the stability of my family.
Yeah.
And so it's just something I had to do. I had to kind of put myself on the back burner and my desires and kind of put hers first for a change. She supported me for as long as I played. She supported me, but she's, 2 kids later, dogs. It's just like it's time to stay in one spot. It's kind of where she was at, and so that's what Paul was going to be for me originally. We ended up buying the house here in Orlando, and that's where I was going to be done playing. We're going to be at the Apollos here making that kind of money, and so when that kind of fell through, the XFL was coming back. I just didn't want to risk it anymore. Didn't want to risk, something like that happening, uprooting the family. It's like let's start a career that I'll be able to keep, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Starting this career now as a firefighter, coming up on 6 months. It's been a long journey. I was in school for a year for it, basically. It's fun. It still kind of offers the same things that you really cherish about your football team, right? And having, the same common goal, working together, screwing around with each other.
Sure.
I get, me all the time, in the fire station. So it still offers that brotherhood, fun, thrill-seeking kind of environment.
Yeah, no, I got you on that one. I mean, I read an article the other day about, obviously you had suffered a horrible tragedy in your family, but you were able to kind of create something good out of it, which is, these classes and kind of awareness for similar situations. Is that like a full blown kind of like nonprofit, or is that just something you're starting out? Can you give a little insight into what those, kind of swim awareness type of classes are that you and your wife are doing?
Exactly. So what ended up forming from that tragedy was our foundation, and our foundation is named after our son. It's the Gunnar Martin Foundation, and my wife runs it, and she has a crew of girls that help her. I was very standoffish about anything that had to do with drowning when it originally happened. And so, I was really kind of had a lot of pushback from that, where I just didn't want to be a part of it. And now I'm trying to get more involved, more comfortable talking about it. So we started that with the hopes of giving kids the opportunity to get swim lessons that haven't had it before or can't afford it was really our main goal. And so luckily, I had friends that were willing to help out and donate. And so we're fortunate enough to have a really good friend, like my friend Caitlin here, who's a swim instructor, who will help us, teach these kids how to swim well. And so what my wife ended up doing was she started it as a nonprofit foundation. And what it does is it provides the funding for kids to have, I guess, basically scholarships. And so it's basically scholarships that we can pay for the swim lessons, the kids who can't afford it. And obviously there's a vetting process that they need to go through and get approved through. Christina has a board members that kind of go through all this stuff and make sure, obviously, that they're not, just trying to get like free lessons, and that they actually need the help. And so we want to be able to provide that for kids. And then my wife runs the Instagram, which is the Gunnar Martin Foundation, I believe is the name of the Instagram. And so she runs that, and she posts daily, or she tries to post daily. With 3 kids, stuff gets crazy, but she tries to post daily, just little reminders, little things that people can do to try to prevent it. Obviously, actions happen, and we never want them to happen, but they do.
Sure.
Some of the main things, actually, Christina, come here real quick. I'll have her tell you, because she's the main expert. She worked in drowning prevention for a long time.
I love it. Bring on another guest. Let's do it.
So this is my wife, Christina.
Hi there. Nice to meet you.
Thank you too. Sorry, we're just getting out of the pool.
So let them know, like, at least like the 5 main precautions for drowning prevention.
Yeah, so we believe in like multiple layers of protection. So like the first thing and the most important way to prevent a drowning is adult supervision. So whenever you're like at the pool and intending to be there, you need to be holding the child who can't swim or at an arm's reach away. Always watching kids. You can assign a water watcher as well. And then another thing that we say is barriers. So as an adult, like we can't always watch our kids. Like with our story, we laid Gunnar down for a nap. We thought he was in a safe place and he found his way out to the pool. So in that instance, we say barriers are really important. We want to make sure there's pool fences up, there's pool alarms, door latches, self-closing, self-latching doors, pool covers, different things like that to make sure that you have things put in place for the times that you're not watching your kids. Think about when your kids are napping or when you're unloading groceries or grabbing laundry from, the laundry room or any of those things. And then the next layer of protection is going to be our swim lessons. So you want to teach your kids to swim in early. They can learn to swim at 6 months old. Survival swim lessons are really great. They teach them to float. And then finally, CPR. So knowing CPR, that's your last line of defense and the only way that you can really save your child if they do have an incident. That's really what we teach and what we really educate on.
So we're fortunate enough, like we're right now, it's a close friend of ours from church, and she is a swim instructor, and she's actually teaching our youngest son right now to swim. And so we're really fortunate to have, all these people that support us are in place to help us out. It's kind of weird how things have worked out, but we're really fortunate to have them. And she runs, her LLC is called Simply Sprout. Caitlin. It's Simply Sprout LLC, correct? Right, yeah. So Simply Sprout LLC is the main one, and her boss, yeah. And so she does it. So this is our friend. She is the main swim instructor. She's the one actually teaching my son right now. And she's one of the people that I'll help. It's Caitlin, one of my wife's good friends, and she is part of the Simply Sprout company that we use a lot. And, a lot of the guys in the fire department are using as well. So it's nice because she has the pool in her house, the one that we were just playing in. And so that her entire pool was designed for swim lessons. So it's not like we can go back there and jump off a dive board and do front flips. I think it's only like 5.5 feet tall. And it has like high ledges and stuff for swim lessons and things to learn on. So that we have all these pieces in place to help these families. So when somebody comes to us and they're like, hey, I can't afford it. Well, hey, we'll pay for it. We'll send you to the swim instructor. We have it ready for you. That's something that we wanted to be able to provide, and having the knowledge of the things that we had no clue about. We stayed at that house for probably like 6-7 months before anything even come close to happening. Just things that, when we were growing up, we never really thought about.
Sure.
How many times when you were a kid did you go to a pool and it actually had a pool fence around? I don't even remember ever seeing kind of thing, and so there's all these different things that are now in place because of the amount of lives that have been lost, unfortunately. And so we tried to turn what happened to us. Obviously, losing a child is something that nobody should ever have to go through. But we wanted to do our best to make sure it doesn't happen to as many people as possible. Obviously, it won't be everybody. As a fireman, you see a lot of things that not many people can handle or want to see. And so preventative measures are all we can hope for and wish for. And so that's our big goal, is teaching people the preventative measures to keeping kids safe, and then providing things for families who can't afford it for them. We want to be able to help. We don't want finances to be in the way of a kid learning how to swim. And so that was the steps that we've taken. Fortunately, we know people like Caitlin that'll be able to help, and majorly, she's a wonderful instructor. Lion's been going for not even a week, and he's already moving well. It's so impressive to watch how they teach and how fast these kids learn.
Yeah, no, that's great insight into that. I mean, I have a young son, 1.5, so I can definitely empathize with how important that is, and making sure that they know how to swim and all the precautions you need to take. So thanks for giving me that overview. I know it's really personal to you, so appreciate that insight. I want to finish up with a couple more questions, kind of bringing it back to UCF, if you don't mind. You obviously were part of an offensive line and a team that was set the foundation for UCF being who they are today, which is a program that's going into the Big 12 and has done a lot of winning over the past decade or whatever it is. What's it like for you? 2013 was that first year where we had our first ever really 12-1 year, first year where we were in a BCS bowl, first time we ever beat a massive opponent in a big bowl game. But since then, you've had the Mackenzie Milton era with beating Auburn in the Peach Bowl and going undefeated, our first ever undefeated season. Now we're moving into the Big 12. What's it like for you to see this growth from UCF going from where you were, which got to a big program, now though being a power conference team and all the winning they've done? What's that kind of, how special is that for you?
Words could never describe it, I remember when I had signed my LOI, my letter of intent to go to UCF, and I'm sitting at a bar and I was watching a UCF game. It was at Glacier that first year. And I was sitting at a bar with a bunch of my high school buddies, and we were kind of watching the game, and we were eating food, just hanging out, and they were just dogging UCF. Like, who the heck's UCF? Why'd you choose them? Why? You could have gone to all these other schools. We could have been coming up to Bama to watch you play, blah, blah, blah. And then now they beg me for tickets. You know, it's kind of cool to see the change, but it's a change that I knew we were going to make. And so, like I told you earlier, like the mentality that I had going into that school that a lot of us had, and I don't say everybody because obviously I can't speak for everybody, but we wanted to change. We wanted to change things, and we were willing to work for it, which is something that I don't think people take very seriously. I don't think anybody will really understand unless you were there. The behind the scenes that happened for us to be who we were was tough.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with O'Leary, dealing with the stuff that we deal with on a daily basis. Even when I got to the pros, and I tell the pros about the kind of workouts we did, the stuff we did, they wouldn't believe it. They'd be like, that's not true. You know, and it'd be like, I'd be over there at San Fran, and then I'd have Bruce Milley come over and be like, hey, what kind of workouts did we do? And he would say the exact same thing. And they were like, oh, okay, maybe you were being serious. You know? And so the foundation that we laid it on that field with blood, sweat, and tears. And so I can never express the gratitude I feel to see this program grow the way it is because the amount of work that we put in. You know, we're the no-names, right? The 2013 team, you know us because we played, but we're the no-names. You know, they had the 2017 season where they're like, McKenzie, and they were the best team ever, and then they forgot about us real quickly. But we were the grunts, right? We laid that hard work foundation for the school, worked our asses off day in, day out. We know we had our meal plan. We didn't have the kitchen that we had. All our meals were like catered in. You know, we got Domino's pizza after after a camp night, you know, for a snack. And you know, these guys got everything they could have ever wanted. You know, their lockers are brand new. Everything's brand new. They got names on their jerseys. They get to wear whatever they want. They get to have fun. You know, they get to, you know, do all the fun stuff that we never did. We never got to wear stuff in our uniform unless all of us were wearing it.
Right. Yeah, man.
How O'Leary was. Like, nobody could ever have the number one. Nobody, gosh, man, could you imagine if O'Leary would just absolutely flip a switch if somebody had an Instagram handle on the back of their, you know, or something like that on the back of their jersey. Nobody could have number one. Nobody could wear all those extra arm sleeves or anything like that. It was just a different breed, and we were different. I'm not saying we were better, but we were.
Do you have a good, I've asked this to Mac Loudermilk, I've asked this to Jordan Franks, I've asked this to a lot of the guys I've interviewed that played under O'Leary. You kind of started talking about him, so I think it's a good time to ask, what's your best O'Leary story that you're kind of comfortable with saying on air? I mean, I've heard some really funny ones just from, you know, not being able to cut your, you know, having to shave and all this other stuff, but there's always some good stories. So I'd love to hear one from you.
Oh, okay. So obviously you know about the white horse thing. That's always a funny thing. Anytime anybody saw me, everybody was saying white horse. You know, everybody walked on eggshells for this guy. And so our team meeting room, you could hear pens drop, right? Nobody talked. Nobody made any,
because they're scared of him.
Except O'Leary. Everybody terrified. You know, he was real big on threatening your college, threatening this, threatening that. And so every once in a while, you would hear somebody's phone go up, right? And it'd be like you'd hear the vibrations, so what would happen in the meeting room was everybody would start coughing. You know, we would all start making noise, so you couldn't hear the sound, but. If O'Leary heard that, he would flip, and then we would get punished for it. All of us somehow we would just get punished. And his kind of punishments would be things like we'd be, you know, an hour into practice, and he would start it over and go right back to the beginning where we were stretching.
Oh wow!
And so nobody wanted anybody else to get in trouble in that team meeting room. It was a very, very specific way he liked things ran. And so we would always do that. But one time, man, there was nothing we could do. There was this, I can't remember the kid's name. He was a young kid. It might have been my senior year, maybe my junior. I can't even remember. They all kind of blur together, you know. But this kid's phone went off in the middle of the meeting, and it wasn't on vibrate. It was like a sound, like a noise.
Oh,
and he
no.
and you could see it in O'Leary. I sat right in front of O'Leary. I was the very front row, right in the middle. I was right in front of O'Leary always. And I was just looking at him, and I remember his face, he was like, "What the F is that?" And so the guy that had this going on he was kind of sitting next to Marty, and Marty was O'Leary's son. And so Marty was like, somebody's phone's going off back here. And I was like, oh, I was like, no.
Screwed.
And he was like, what's it? Whose phone was that? And the kid got up. He was, I was like, it's me. He's like, bring it here. And Larry took this kid's phone and launched it in the meeting room against
No
the
way.
wall. Broke it. Just broke it, like launched it.
Ari Gold style.
And he did not, you don't mess with his meeting time,
No.
and this his meeting room. So that was his thing. And you better be in that meeting room quiet and ready when it was time to go. So if we had a meeting let's just say our meeting was at 7:45 in the morning. The meeting was supposed to start on our itinerary. It was 7:45. Everybody would be in that meeting room at 7:15, probably no later. The meeting would be over before 7:30. So you don't come in late, you don't do stuff like that. And so everybody's already on eggshells. And then when the phone goes off, that's just a no-no. Like for me, I tried to stay out of the line of fire. So I did anything like that. If I went to a meeting room, I either didn't have my phone or it was off.
Yeah.
I was never taking risks. It's not worth it for me. And so when that happened, it was like, oh my God. Just seeing that, because you don't think that, because he threw the hell out of that.
Oh, I'm sure.
It's a pretty pro. But then when it shattered, I don't know what happened after that, whether they got him a new one, which is probably what happened. They probably ended up getting him a new one or something. But I just remember thinking, like, God, first of all, that's what you get, kids. Like, you should know better than to have your phone on in here. But, as a vet, that as a young guy, you don't really know how serious this man is. But it was always kind of a walking on eggshells. But the thing was with O'Leary, he was like that out in public, man. He was just absolute a-hole to everybody.
Right.
And, it wasn't like he treated this person better than this one, this reporter better than this reporter, or this coach better than that coach. He was a-hole to everybody. But I will say this about him, and I always respected him for this. When you sat down with him one-on-one, he was totally different. And so that's something I knew and I appreciated. Him and I had that understanding of each other, when I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do outside of here, and we'll have these man talks, together. So I spent a lot of time in his office just talking, just shooting it with him. And that's when I realized, okay, he's got the iron fist rule, but he's really a down to earth guy. He laughs, he's funny, he's cool. He's got a funny sense of humor, it's dry, but he's a funny sense of humor. And so it was pretty cool, man. It was pretty special. And I remember like it was yesterday, right before our bowl game versus Baylor. I ate dinner with him. It was just me and him at a table, and we were just talking and talking and talking. I told him that I just really appreciated him. He's like, I know it's been tough dealing with me because I wasn't always the best behaved either. I was like, man, I just, I appreciated how you did things for us and what you've done for us. And I do. And even when Coach Taft died and I got to see O'Leary again, it was cool to have those conversations with him and sit there and talk to him and see him. He looked like he hadn't aged a day, and it was probably 10 years later. And so he had those sides to him, but he meant well overall. Like, I think he meant well. He just had a hard way of showing it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of similar stories for O'Leary that, he was hard ass, but when you're talking to him one-on-one as a man, like, he was fair and, gave good advice and all that type of stuff. So, I want to kind of end this with some rapid fire questions here. There's some kind of fun ones here to finish up. So let's start with, in your playing day, who was the hardest person on the team to go up against? Meaning, like, you're going up against D-line in practice. So who was on UCF while you were there? Who was the hardest guy you had the most trouble with, or just the toughest one to go up against?
I probably have to give that one to Bruce Miller.
Makes sense.
Give that one to Bruce Miller just because he was such a smart player. He knew how to use things against you that you were doing. He didn't know how to shift your weight, this and that. But I would have to give that one to Bruce Miller. He was probably the hardest one to go against.
Sure. What about like opponent that wasn't at UCF? Could have been someone like Clowney or something like that, or who is someone you remember that was like, damn, this guy is a beast.
Clowney was good. A guy versus Southern Miss I thought was incredibly good too. He was kind of an outside linebacker, DN type. His name was Jamie Collins. He played for a long time in the NFL for the Patriots and Super Bowl champion. Dude was phenomenal. I thought he was a really, really good player. He was really tough to block. I'd have to give it to I'd probably split between Clowney and Collins.
Got it. Okay. What would you say was your favorite UCF restaurant while on campus?
Ooh, on campus.
I guess it could be off campus too. What was your kind of favorite, UCF food or UCF area food?
Yeah, Mellow Mushroom, no doubt. That was where we went. That was home. My wife and I eat there all the time still, because we still live in town and we still live kind of close to it. So that's definitely Mellow Mushroom. And I'll say this about and Clowney too. I played with both of them in the pros. So I got to know them personally, and hang out with them. They're both actually pretty good guys. So it's kind of I just thought about that when I was talking about them. I played with actually both of them. So they're actually cool guys, but they were really tough to block.
Yeah, no, that completely makes sense. Who is the funniest guy on the team that just had everyone cracking up at UCF while you were there?
Cedric Thompson.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah, dude, just absolute comedian all the time. Just no matter what, dude would have everybody cracking. To this day, he's hilarious. I think he's a chef now. And even his chef videos make me crack up. Yeah, it's Chef Ready Said Cook, I think is his Instagram handle. But he cooks a lot, and it's pretty cool to watch him, do that. He's still got that same, comedy behind what he does. And he was the same, and he was even worse back then. Definitely Cedric Thompson.
Gotcha. Two more questions. I think I know your answer here, but gotta ask, who do you think would win in a hypothetical 2013 versus 2017, and what would be that final score?
Oh, I think McKenzie would have had a hard time with our defensive backs. Like, we had really good defensive backs, really smart defensive backs, and our D line, and they're really hard to block too. Obviously, I think we would win.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would win. And just like any football game, I think it would come down to 5 or 6 plays and who handled the ball better, who didn't have the turnovers. It'd be a good football game. But I think we would win. I know a lot of those linemen personally. I know their D-line wouldn't beat us. They wouldn't beat my O-line. I love them to death. They were a great defensive line. And most of those guys know it too. Most of those guys knew that, you don't beat the big time. That's what we kind of call ourselves. Like, you don't beat us. Like, we barely gave up any sacks the entire year. If they did, it wasn't because the guys were better than us. It's because we did something stupid.
Gotcha.
And so it was one of those. I have to give that to us.
Of course. No, I just always like to ask that question.
A lot of people that I know that know both the teams would say the same thing that aren't on the teams. Obviously, if you were playing, it's a different perspective. But a lot of like the staff and I've had this conversation a lot of people, so I got to give it to them. That's just.
Yep. No, I get it. Final question then. What do you think, should be UCF's realistic kind of expectations in year one of the Big 12? Like, how good do you think they can do, and how good do you think they can expect to do, or fans, how good do you think we should expect? You've been through a conference transition where UCF dominated that conference transition right away in year one, but this is a little bit different. We're going to the Big 12. There's Texas, Oklahoma. There's some real big schools here. We're not facing, Temple and ECU. So, give me your kind of thoughts on what a realistic year one should be.
I can tell you how I would go into this as an athlete.
Okay.
And I would go into this the exact same way that I went into the conference switch when I was in. I was like, this is a year that can literally make or break, right? You can come to this conference, dominate from day one, and just change the whole trajectory of this school. Or you can come in, suck it up, not do your job, not do what you're supposed to do, and cost the school a lot, right? We're getting a big opportunity here to change things for Orlando. Not just the school, but for Orlando. Change these kids' lives. Man, they got the opportunity to play for a national championship. So it's different. It's different. And if they don't have that mindset right now, it's too late.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
These young guys, come and speak to them. If they're not even thinking about championships right now, it's too late. These championships should have started in January. Should have started the end. If it was me, after that, I would have worked out probably 2 days after that game and be like, man, this season's over. Let's focus on what's about to happen. Like it's getting real. You know, it's like no more of the baby stuff. Now we're in the big leagues, and it's time to change things around. So I would hope that they would win with that same mentality, that they understand what this is. You know, as a young athlete, you don't really understand the full grasp of everything that's going on with this conference change, the amount of money involved, and the exposure that's involved and things. I surely hope, and I believe if they believe it, because the talent's there, and I know the coaching's there. I've seen this coaching staff. I've met them multiple times. They're brilliant. And so if they can believe and be willing to work for it, that's something that it goes should be going, unsaid. That I shouldn't have to say that. This is something that they're going to have to work for, and so this is not going to be easy. I do not think it'll be easy, but I think it's doable. I think it's doable for them to have a dominant season, undefeated, I would hope, and I would go on that same mentality. That was how I was. It didn't matter who we were playing. So what? They changed their jersey and the helmets. They got guys that are, 6'5", running 4.6 40s on Temple's defensive ends. And so these guys are still freak athletes no matter what school you go to. But if you do your job, you trust your brothers, and you get it done, you'll be okay. You execute the game plan, do your job, and trust in your brothers, you should be okay. But as long as you put the work in ahead of time, right? This isn't one of those you show up to the front door, hey, I'm here, let's do this. No, this is something that they should already be in there. They should already know the majority of their plays. Obviously, they're not going to put them all in yet, but it's something that can alter the course of the school forever. And they need to treat it as such. They need to treat it as serious as they can. I wish I had the opportunity to help them in any way that I could. I live right down the street from UCF, man. Nothing would make me happier than to, go there and at least talk to these old linemen, to see their mentality. I'd be able to tell you pretty quickly, what are they about? Who are they about? I want to see them play. I hope for the best. You always do. But I know that it never comes for free. And I know that success never comes for free. And so that if you want to be great, you want to do these great things, you got to put in the work for it. And so I'm sure they are. I know they're probably expecting excellence, and hopefully they're working for it. I want them to do good. I believe they can do good, but they have to want and believe the same thing.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, appreciate that answer. All right, man, that was fun. I appreciate you coming on and giving me your time.
Absolutely, my friend. I appreciate it, Alan.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for tuning in for another UCF Football Updates podcast. That was former UCF offensive lineman Chris Martin. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at ucf.football.updates. Thanks for your time again, Chris.
Absolutely, my friend. Anytime.